Okay, how's it going, everybody? I hope everybody is doing okay. I'm having a pretty good day. For a minute, I didn't really think that it was going to go the way it did, but I ended up averting a crisis, right? So I got up this morning and I said, okay, I want to get rid of I'm trying to get rid of all noise in my 4x4 booth. So I said, at first I was talking to ChatGPT and I said, you know what? I want one of those one of those whisper rooms. But ChatGPT said, well, that's a big investment. You have to know you have to know what your what the whole point is of getting it. And I thought about it and I said, well, you know what? Really getting one of those things, I'm still going to have computer sound noise. Still going to have, computer fan noise, should I say. Still going to have that. Still going to have, whatever other little stuff is there. All of that's still going to be there. So it kind of made me think and said, well, when I think about it, the only thing that I want to do basically is I want to make it quieter in my booth. So I thought about it. I said, well, the only thing that really bothers me inside of my booth is the computer fan noise. So ChatGPT says, well, that's kind of what you need to focus on. You need to, don't spend a big investment for something that for the wrong reason. I said, okay. Let me think about it. It's the only thing I really want to get rid of. I could just get a monitor and put my laptop outside of my booth, and that would eliminate the fan noise inside of my booth. So I said, okay, I'll do that. And that's a really easy thing to do. So I said, okay. Then I got up this morning and I was thinking about it and I said, well, let me Google how much a monitor is. So I Google it and a monitor was, $100, whatever. So I called. Well, I didn't call. I'm sorry. I didn't call. I Googled Best Buy. So I get up, I go over to Best Buy, because the monitor was only $100. So I said, okay, it's investment well spent. So I went over there. I get a monitor, nice monitor for $100. So I get a dongle because I'm thinking, okay, I didn't know the monitor came with an HDMI plug. So I bought a dongle so I could connect two HDMI cords. So I get it, fast forward, get home because I'm like right across the highway or right across the street and the little freeway crossover from Best Buy. So I get home and I get everything unwrapped and I figure out how to put the little stand on the back of the computer because when you buy it, it's upside down. You have to unscrew it, turn it over, and then figure out how to get it back on there. So I did that, and I'm getting ready to put the monitor in my booth. So I get my computer out, I run my cords, I got that down pat, get the monitor into my booth, and then I go through this shitstorm of, okay, the monitor don't work. And before, what I had to do, and what some of you, this might be some good information for some people listening. What I had to do before is when I downloaded a plugin, right, on Audacity, in which I use, on Reaper, in which I have, and on FL Studio, the plugin wouldn't work. So when I bought my Waves plugins, I ended up calling customer service, which I highly recommend Waves. They have great customer service. Highly recommend it. So the guy, he got on the phone and he had me do a remote installation app and put it on my computer. Then he got in touch with me, and he's on the phone and he's taking control, doing everything. And then he looked it up and said, "Well, it says here, let's try this. You're disabling the graphics card." So we disabled it, and plugins work like plugins work great. So that was a couple months ago, because I bought I think 3 plugins from Waves. So I did that, and fast forward to today, I still had the same problem. So I was talking to ChatGPT or Copilot, and it was telling me to go find this file and change this and put this over here, and tried it again, didn't work. Okay, well, now we're going to get this straightened out. This is ChatGPT talking. So why don't you do this and do that? And I say, you know what? I'm not doing all that, because I'm the one who's doing the work, not you. You're a computer program just rambling off stuff, from the depths of nowhere. I'm the one who's doing the work, wasting my time, yada, yada, yada. So I almost gave up. And, because it was like I had 2 choices: either disable the graphics card and my plugins work, but I just bought a monitor that I can't use without the graphics card. So I said, okay, let me try and figure this out. So I Googled it again. And Google says something about what's called an AMD cleanup tool. And it basically takes everything AMD that you got on your computer, and it just gets rid of it. And what it did was it got rid of it, and it put a Microsoft drivers in place of them. So instead of a AMD graphics card, I had a Microsoft graphics card. But keep listening, because it gets better. So of course with the Microsoft card, I can't connect a different monitor. You can't do anything with that stuff. So I said, okay. At first I was kind of stumped, and then I said, okay, well, let me update. So I went and checked for updates, and Windows, it looked up AMD everything, updated versions, whatever. And then it downloaded those. So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, this ain't even going to work. This is just a waste of time. I had no faith in it at all. And real quick, I'll say this real quick. I had an issue with because I have the monitor, and then I have a wireless keyboard. And I was trying to figure out why my keyboard, the touchpad, wouldn't work when I'm in here in my booth. And my laptop is right outside the booth. It's right on the other side of the wall. But what I figured out is I had to use the dongle that I had connected to my computers. I bought a cooling fan for my laptop, and I had the dongle. Since it was so far away, it wouldn't work because it wasn't close enough to the wireless keyboard. So I had to bring it in here, and then all of a sudden, voila, started working. Because when it was close enough, because it's a little bit of an older one, so it is what it is. But what was I saying? Okay, after I got the drivers installed, right? And I'm sitting there, they installed. I'm saying, oh man, I really don't want to open this program and try it, because I don't want the letdown of it not working. So I open up Audacity and I, upload uh any audio file. And then I say, you know what? Let me try a plugin because I know I'm thinking to myself, I know it's not going to work. I know it's not going to work, because I'm thinking this graphics card is enabled. It's not going to work, you know, and who best to figure it out but Windows? Windows never figures out that kind of stuff, but I open up a plugin and it works. So I said, okay, now I'm not believing this. So I'm still outside my booth, right? So I said, let me stick my head around the corner and see if my monitor is working. Because, two things at once, I'm playing the fucking lottery today, because I got some luck coming from somewhere. So stick my head around the corner and lo and behold, the monitor is working. Come in here. The only thing I had to do was I was wondering why the monitor, it kept kind of, the mouse, it kept kind of stopping. I was like, okay, what is going on? And remember the USB dongle was still kind of, it was like still inside the wall of my sound booth. So I was like, man, what is going on here? So I thought about it and I said, maybe the dongle is still too far away. Maybe the USB plug-in is still too far away. So I grabbed it and, pulled it out, and now it's kind of draped over my my Shure mic stand right here. And lo and behold, that was it. So I'm like, you know what? Three things at once. My graphics card is enabled, the plugins work, my monitor works, the wireless keyboard that I dug out of a pile of junk that I had put away because I bought it a couple years ago. Luckily, I still had it and could find the wireless connection thing to it. And I was like, man, this is pure luck for all of this stuff to work at once. It's like, dude, you probably know this stuff never happens, ever. It's like, I was so pissed, because I told, like I said, I told Copilot, you know what, when he told me, well, why don't we do this? I said, dude, I'm not doing that. I'm not. I was pissed. I was like, I spent $130, down the drain, for my monitor and the little connector thing. And I was pretty pissed. I was pretty pissed. But luckily, that worked out for the better. And that's how I'm recording right now. And even, one more thing, and even when I started recording, when I got ready to record, I was recording. I was like, man, it sounded just like I got my laptop outside in my booth and I'm in here talking, and that's what it sounded like. That's what it would sound like on the recording. I was like, man, that is like, what is going on here? So I went into the sound settings on my computer, and what had happened was when Windows downloaded the drivers, they downloaded the AMD microphone driver. So it automatically diverted right back to that driver, and that's what was going on. It went back to their driver, and I had to go and uncheck it and check my setup that I have. And that was it. And, that's how you hear my beautiful voice right now, So that was, that was it. That was, I don't know. It's almost like you You fall off a cliff a little bit, and you're falling, and then all of a sudden, you know, a giant eagle swoops you up and drops you off on the other side. A little extreme, but you get the gist. You get the gist. Stay away from cliffs and eagles. Just saying. And but that was definitely a nice thing, because it ended up as planned. It ended up as planned, so that's the good thing. It ended up as planned, because I really didn't think that it was going to work out, and I was getting pissed, and I was like, this is going to ruin my day. Because I went and did this. It's one of the kind of things where you go spend some money you probably shouldn't have spent, and then it still doesn't work out, and you're like, oh God, this was a very bad decision. So thank goodness it worked out, because that would have been a really nice monitor, that I would have put back in the box. Well, let me say that again, because I kind of jurgled that. That would have been a really good monitor that I would have had to put back in the box, brand new. That would have sat in the corner, and I probably would have gave it away, or pawned it or something. And that would have been good. That would not have been good at all. So I'm kind of glad they worked out. I really am. I'm really glad they worked out the way it did. So I'm not worried about that for the rest of the day, and it's not on my mind. I got that done, and that's done. It's an upgrade to my booth. It proves that I don't need a $4,000 whisper room. My booth right here is pretty good. And for all of those that are wondering, I do have my expander on, but I'm gonna show you how quiet it is in here real quick. So I'm gonna be quiet for about a couple seconds and show you how quiet it is in here. And I might even. Well, I can't do that because the expander is outside the booth. But I'm just showing you real quick how quiet it is in here. Real quick, right now. That's how quiet it is in here. No, and you can tell when I'm talking, if you listen, you can't, that fan noise isn't coming through when I'm talking. So it makes the file easier to clean up. So that's always a good thing. That's always a good thing. It's always a good thing. It always, is better for the episode. But I just wanted to get an episode out today to let you guys know what about that adventure, and that's a headache that I don't have to have on my mind for the rest of the day, because it's something I really didn't want to deal with. So I'm glad it worked out the way I wanted it to. And as usual, I hope everybody's having a good day. I am for those of you that might be tired of me talking about this. I'm still I'm on the it's a good wait time right now for Amazon in Sterling Heights. I'm waiting on them to get back with me about my background check, in which I'm not. Don't get me wrong, I'm not dead on about the background check. I just don't want to. I don't like waiting. I like to. If you're going to tell me no, just call me or send me an email. Hey, you didn't pass. Whatever. You're no longer in being considered, whatever, so I can move on and take them off of that I'm waiting to hear back list that I have in my mind. And I'm not saying I'm not gonna pass, but I'm not saying I am. I think I might have 1 point on my license. And the lady that did the interview, she made it seem like, like you couldn't have any points on your license, none. Like you had to have a perfect record. Like, lady, number one, this is Detroit, you know, and police have to make their quota. So some people just get tickets because of that, and if everybody had to have a perfect record, you know, we wouldn't have any commercial drivers. I see truck drivers getting tickets all the time, all because, of the nature of their job. They're trying to get that load to where it's going. They know they only getting paid this much, yada, yada, yada. I can understand if you got a bunch of suspensions and driving with no license and all that kind of stuff. Those are obvious. But, I think I got 1 point on my license. So it's like, if you all want to be petty, then be petty. It is what it is. I'm not, upset with them because they are. It's just like, honestly, to be completely honest, I'm not, talking, but it's like, from the way their workforce looks, no offense to anybody, but from the way their workforce looks, I should be golden walking in there, because it's like, it's, and that's not, don't get me wrong, that's not a color thing. It's just where you are in life and the decisions that you're making type of thing, so it's I hate to say this, but some people cannot get out of their own way, so they're still in that stage of it's everybody else's fault. They're still in that stage of I don't want to do it. I'll rather than work for it, I'll take it, or they want to be they want to be that kind of thug type person, and that's that's just America's work pool right now. So it's like, have no employees or have a bunch of employees that have issues that you kind of had to loosen up the rules for because you need employees. At the end of the day, the person buying the car could care less who builds it as long as it's built right and has a warranty. Investors, they could care less, how many crackheads you hire. They care less how many people at your job smoke weed. They could care less. Long as that stock goes up and they make money. So it's pretty cool. I actually ran into a guy that kind of answered a question for me. He was coming in the building, and he was an Amazon delivery guy. And I told him, I said, I applied at Sterling Heights. And I said, how do you know, what order this stuff goes in? And then he showed me a number on each package. He said, that's $390, that's $300. Then you got $299, $298, $297, stuff like that. I said, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And also, some places you have more than one package. So he was here at my building and he had like probably 10 packages. So I was like, okay, and he wasn't in a rush. Wasn't in a rush. I was like, I can do that. I can do that. Just being myself. But I also looked at the UPS guy. I'm always looking at him, seeing as how I applied for a job that's pretty much the same as what they do. I guess the only issue I had with the Amazon guy that I saw is if I did get the job, I would ask him if I could bring my dolly with me. So then when I, because he had a big bin of packages that he kind of drug through the door and in the elevator and stuff like that. And I was like, I would more than likely rather have something a little bit more organized so I can move better and I'm not, tired when I get done delivering them, and it's a steady thing. So, but he was a pretty cool dude. And that answered one question that I had about those packages because I'm like, how in the world do you putting packages in the truck? How do you know what's first, what's last? What's the order? So, I mean, that was pretty cool. But like I said, again, but I don't really have high hopes about it. I don't really have low hopes about it. It's kind of it is what it is type thing. It's like, let me know so I can either relax because I know I'm moving forward or start hitting up other applications because I know that one is no longer an option. So, but like I said, I just wanted to tell that story real quick. I hope everybody's having a good day. If you're not, it gets better. It gets better. You just have to get out of your own way. You just have to get out of your own way. And it's not that hard. It's not that hard at all. But enjoy the rest of your day. If your day is going not the way you wanted it to go, stop right where you are and say, okay, I'm not going to let the kind of day that I've had up until this point affect the kind of day that I have from this point till this day is over. Don't let that stuff affect the rest of the day you still got left. Okay? Have a good one.